these aliens. Positively sure I'm absolutely mad about something. Oh, I'm positively sure I'm absolutely crazy too. Oh.
Hi, my name is Mark Sala. Welcome to Little Green Man. In Canada, in the UK, and other Commonwealth nations, we have a system where we have a House of Commons and a House of Lords. In Canada, it's called the Senate, but it basically has the same functions, and it's kind of handled in much the same way. The House of Commons are supposed to be commoners, people who are not peers of the realm, who are not lords and not ladies, but they are commoners, ordinary working people. Now, the House of Lords you have to be a lord or a baroness at least in order to sit, and then you have to be assigned by the Prime Minister. I think the monarch can assign people to the House of Lords, and you get to sit there until you hit 75, and then you've got to retire. And the Senate is pretty much the same. It is an assigned, it's not democratic at all, not even slightly. That maybe if you've run for office and you've been successful, you're a successful business people, you get to go in the Senate, and you're assigned, you're not voted in. Maybe the people that are running the government were voted in, but the Senate was not. The idea is that then the House of Commons, the commoners that don't really know well enough for themselves, pass some laws, and then the people that know what they're doing, the adults in the Senate or in the House of Lords, you get to vet that law and decide, should we let it through or not? So it's really, yes, it's a safety net and it can be useful, but there are very few laws that really the Senate or the House of Lords actually stops, even though it is highly unpopular and they're highly harmful. They get through anyway. Now, the difference and the growth in the House of Lords has actually changed a little bit. So now, of course, it was when it was originally in place, they were literal lords that were born into their nobility. And now people who sit in the House of Lords in the UK are given they're promoted to lordship. And these are businessmen or politicians, and they get to sit in the House. Same thing with the Senate. Politicians, businessmen, people who already are powerful get assigned to the Senate. So in the olden days, it would have been literal lords. Now it's also lords by blood. Now it's lords by name. And the idea is that with the lords is that originally they were born into it. They were what we call in England what we call old money. Now, old money are actually that rich people that own land, that own property, that not just run business, they don't run businesses necessarily, but they have lots of land. So the lords and the ladies, the peers of the realm. Now we have another thing about is the people, the new money. These are commoners that have got as high as they can in the system, where they now own big, successful, super successful businessmen and women, usually men. And they have become what I would call the corporations and the rich people that own them. Now, in English vernacular, I often heard, whether it was on sitcoms or whether it was in real life, was that the lords and the ladies knew how to conduct themselves. They didn't talk about their wealth too much, particularly early on in the 20th century and before. They tend to kept it to themselves, particularly as the working people got more and more powerful and more involved in politics and were able to control things a little bit better. So the rich people just kept quiet, just kept a low profile. And it was only when the rich people started opening their stately homes, their mansions, for visitors to come in and look, and then they charge a few pounds to get in, that we realised, oh no, they're actually in financial trouble. And it became a cliche in English drama, in the 20th century drama, where these people, the lords, they all still had the posh voice, they all talked properly, had the no chin and the big ears, the inbreeding and all that. But they were always broke, and they always went around with holes in their clothes. And you've probably seen those kinds of shows. But they had a certain decorum, a certain way of holding themselves that was a little bit more classy, if to use the word. Really, they're upper classes, and they acted like they were upper class. Now, the new money, on the other hand, were commoners that didn't know how to handle themselves and that were flaunting, I've got big money, here's a wad of cash, I'll go out and buy a big flashy car, look at me. And because of that behaviour, they didn't know how to handle themselves. Would tend to be rather rude and obnoxious with it. They come to be called vulgar. So vulgar behaviour. So new money, and the phrase was, new money is vulgar. But now, why I'm talking about this, is that now we have those people who are rich and powerful and already have lots of money, who are now running the House of Commons. Now, while they technically are commoners, they're not lords and ladies, they are still, many of them have lots and lots of money. Or they have lots and lots of money behind them, driving them. And we can even see an example as our Prime Minister, who, while he's done some good things, he's got lots of people that want to criticise him, whether justly or not, I'll let you decide. But we have our own royal family. We've got the Trudeaus. We've got Pierre with his son, Justin. You could say that if these are the new peers of the realm, the new money, the new merchant class, as they were called, then surely Justin would be a prince in that analogy there. If they're now the new nobles, the new people that are controlling. In that way, the Trudeaus are very much a royal family, inasmuch for Canada, inasmuch as the Clintons and the Bushes are the royal families, also the Kennedys as well, are the royal families in the US, and that's certainly how we've heard them mentioned in throughout the past several years. I mean, this is nothing new. I'm not bringing anything new here. Now, the problem is that now we've got more and more money coming into politics. You've got these powerful people becoming more and more involved, and they are now in our house, this house that belongs to us, the common people, the people that don't already control the country, that don't already control the land, and they are now controlling our houses. Now, the House of Commons is also the houses and the local governments that we have in the legislature here in Manitoba, your provincial legislature. And then you'll have your municipal governments and so on. And in England, you'll have your county councils and your borough councils. These should be run by us, the commoners, the people that live here, the people that work, and the people that are part of the community. These houses belong to us. The House of Commons. That's who it belongs to, and that's who may not necessarily be historically accurate to say that the commoners really ran the country. But it's got our name on it. Let's take that house back. It bears our name, because if we don't take it back, we're in trouble. Right now, we've got the provincial government here in Manitoba want to add more and more money into politics, raising the limits of what you can spend, taking the possibility of running for government, making it harder and harder for people who have regular paying jobs, cannot afford to pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $10,000 a year to back your political party. But guess who can? It's that new money, that vulgar new money that wants to force its will on the rest of us. So it's coming to that point where if you don't have any money, you don't get represented. No money, no representation. That is really where it all comes back. So it's time to take back those houses that bears our name. And let's put back into the house the commoners who work hard, who take all the effort, but yet get little in return. And let's put us back in our house. Let's claim it back. It's time to oust the rich people and who have already taken control. And now they can keep the House of Lords, they can keep the Senate, at least for the time being anyway. Let those people that have bag loads of money go to the Senate. But leave the House of Commons for us. It's time for us to take it back, because they're not going to give it. So that is what we need to do. The call to action, Goyagi, is get involved in politics, write letters, protest, call a representative, join a party. Why don't you run for office or help someone else run for office? Support someone that you care about, a party, join a political party or an independent, it doesn't matter. Just get off your arse and get involved. And let's take the House of Commons and those Common House back for those of us who belong there. Little Green Man. Hey, before you leave, don't forget to click the subscribe button and click the little notification icon-y thing at the bottom, because you don't want to miss out on what these guys are going to do to you next week. Hi, my name's Mark Saller. Welcome to Little Green Man. And today I'm going to talk about something that has been bothering me for a very long time, long before I could even vote, when I started to find out things about the political system that I was living in back in England. The system here in Canada isn't that different. But it was the whole idea of you voting for someone and they're in for 4 years or 5 years or whatever the period is, and they're in and they're stuck there. It's like they can do what they want, how they want, with no repercussions. And if they do something you don't like, well, too bad. You have a choice. You can vote them out next time, but that could be another 4 or 5 years away. For me, it always seemed like it was a kind of dictatorship where you had no choice but to follow the lead of the people that are in power. Okay, so it may not be a dictatorship, might be a strong word, but it's basically someone is in power and you can't get them out. And maybe if there's someone else you can vote for, well, then you can, but probably not. Incumbents tend to stay in. So the problem here is that there's a system where you really have no time for buyer's remorse. If you did vote for someone, realize that they'd lied, or if you realized that they'd done something, they were doing something wrong, contrary to what they ran on, you're screwed. You can't back out of it. There's no way of pushing them out or replacing them or even getting them to do what you want them to do unless it's close to an election and you're threatened to not vote for them. And if you can get enough people involved, maybe they'll listen. But it gets really difficult. I mean, particularly when we're looking at political parties. You've got a choice between, yes, we can choose between various political parties. I mean, there are commentators in the US that are complaining that there are only 2 parties there. But the reality is here in Canada and in the UK as well, and other liberal democracies, really you only have 2 parties that really seem to count. And there has to be something that really goes wrong in order for the third party to even have a chance, let alone the 4th or 5th party and the smaller parties. So what we're looking at then is you've got a choice between a group of policies, a plan, by one party, a complete plan of policies that they have, which they will use to draft laws and legislations. And then there'll be the second party that will have its same idea. They'll have a whole load of policies that will eventually become laws. And it's kind of like an old-fashioned, or becoming old-fashioned TV plan. You sign up and you say, oh, I want television, to your TV company, sure, or MTS we have here, and here is your package. You've got these 15, 20 channels, and you're stuck with it. You can't choose the 1 or 2 that you want. Now that's changed recently in recent years, but the idea is the same. Is if you want a high minimum wage, and you vote for that particular party, but then they have, in order to get that, then you have to go with the other policies that you might not really like very much, or for that matter, you might not even be aware of. So you're stuck with a package of policies, many of them that you, if you were aware of what they were, you probably wouldn't agree with, and you're stuck with this package for 4 years. It's a 4-year contract, and it's a really frustrating place to be. So when you actually vote for your political party, then you're not voting for someone to represent you in Parliament or in your local legislature. You're actually voting for the party's representative. So which party do you want in power? And that person that's in power doesn't represent you, doesn't represent me, they represent the party. Now, as long as the policies are good and for the most part are the policies that will benefit you, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But it still comes down to the fact is that you'll have maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 parties of packages to choose from, and you better hope that they're all those policies are good and will benefit you. Now the trouble is, how do you really know what's going on the policies that your particular party has? I've looked around on several political parties' websites, and there's very few of them have a list of policies. None of them say these are our policies, bang, 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 bang. You can read into them inside and out and backwards before you do some research. You can't do that. Most people don't have that on there. Maybe as a lead up to an election, there'll be a platform, and you can read some very high-level points on it, and that's about it. Once the election's done, that stuff seems to come down. And so we really are just left with an illusion of choice, because you can't pick for the policy here and there. You can't say, I want them, your representative, to vote yes on this policy, yes on this piece of legislation, and no on another piece of legislation, if the party has decided that this is the policies that they are going to implement. And we kind of get a little bit stuck. And part of the problem too is that everyone is so busy. We're working 40 hours a week, maybe spending another 4 to 8 hours a day working on the house, cutting the grass, whatever you do. Leisure, maybe you want to just sit down and relax for a bit in front of the television, and then you sleep for another 8 hours or so, and it starts again. You don't really have the time to look into this stuff, so you kind of have no option, or we have no option, but just to give up and let this small group of people who decide on these policies, or certainly who develop the policies, and hand over our freedom and hand over the ruling of ourselves, the true democracy, to a small group of people. And so this is where we come to, where I get to, is the idea of proportional representation. While definitely it is true some of the first past the post is really not a particularly good way of picking a representative, because it's, someone can, maybe 20%, if you've got enough parties, there are enough people running for that position. I mean, 10, 15, 20% could be enough to get a majority vote, with the majority of people not being represented. So if you're going to do ranked choice voting or something along those lines, then you will be far more represented, but not by individual policies, not by individual pieces of legislation that you would, you could use, pick a la carte. Rather, you get proportional representation on the big group of policies that a political party has put together for your convenience. And so that's fine. As long as those parties are really, those policies are evidence-based, and they do work together to make your lives and my life better, then that's fine. But we're still left to voting for a party rather than the individual who is going to be responsible to us, people that are responsible to the party. So proportional representation then it really reason why politicians don't seem to be in North America, and don't seem to be wanting to get into this and push that direction, because it does take some of the control that the parties have over the political system. Justin Trudeau ran on a platform, the Liberals ran on a platform of proportional representation, and he went through an entire put a big committee together. They went through a whole series of different kinds of proportional representation, and they came out with a recommendation, and they said not unilaterally, sorry, there was representatives from pretty much every party, and they agreed that the ranked choice voting isn't the best one, and here's another one. And Justin Trudeau says, nope, we're not going to do that, because ranked choice voting benefits the middle, the centre party more than anyone else. And that was the one he seemed to want to go to. He didn't say this in public, but that is obviously the centrist party was the one, and his Liberals are seen as centrist, even though they are quite far neoliberally right. And so he made an authoritarian decision, ironically, saying it is my decision to make, and there will be no proportional representation from the Liberals if they try and run it again. They are likely to lose the election, because that could be something that would say, you promised us and you backed out of it already. Why would we trust you again? We wouldn't. So I would be stunned if they tried again. So proportional representation in Canada, at least for the short term, is dead. So where do we go from here? I mean, what can we actually do that will benefit us then, if party politics is so weak? And actually it really is quite corruptible, not necessarily in the bribery sense, but it's corruptible in that you have a relatively small group of people that develop the policies, a larger group of people in the party vote for those policies and put them into the platform, and everybody else then has to live by those policies. You don't really get a say. Now the future of this then is what I would say, and I don't have any firm answers, and I don't have any real a real plan on how to implement this. But I've got one point to make here, is that in order to make the party representative, the member of the provincial parliament or the member of parliament or whatever the elected official is that if the ridings were small enough and you knew the person that was in that position of power, you could go knock on the door, tap, tap. Hey, Jack, what the hell are you doing? You voted the wrong way on that piece of legislation and now I'm out of work. You could go and do that if you knew him personally or her personally. But as it stands now in Manitoba, provincially, there are about 1.28 million people living in Manitoba. Now, those aren't all of voting age, but they are all affected by whoever gets into power. So we're looking at 57 ridings, and so 1.2 million divided by 57 ridings is approximately 22,500 people for one representative. Do you know who your representative? Maybe you know by name. Do you know where his office is? Well, I know where mine is, but that's because I'm interested in politics, obviously, and you probably do because you're watching political videos, so you probably know where yours are. But ask your friends, ask your neighbour, do they know who their representative is and where their office is? The answer is probably not, and they're probably not really that interested. But if they were living on the same block as you, well, then that changes the things entirely. So what I would say is things that we can do is to make those ridings way smaller, maybe take them down to 10% of that size. Yes, it would mean there would be more ridings, and maybe there would be a cost in having full-time representatives. But then again, we got some. I don't have a full plan on this one, but we have got way too many people represented by way too few people. And if we can bring those, take those ridings and reduce them to just a fraction of the size that they are, maybe even down to 2 or 3 blocks, maybe, where we have little smaller councils that would then elect someone, and then there'll be that group of areas in the city that would then vote, of those voted representatives, pick 2 or 3 that will go and take a seat, something along those lines. And then you could actually be in a position of just having a couple of hundred people in your riding, and rather than needing a political party, you would actually have a neighbour who would sit there. And that neighbour would then vote according to the needs or the wants of the people, the real people, and not to a particular party. So you don't need then to pick a package of policies. You would just then be dealing with each issue as it arises. And then maybe there will be an opportunity to have a vote of no confidence if someone is voting clearly against the will of his smaller constituents, and then they could maybe put a vote of no confidence and replace them with someone else. Because they're supposed to be representing us, the people. And if they are just going to go ahead with their own agenda, well, then they're not representing us at all. And it's not really fair that the only person that can actually take people out of power are the people that already have the power. So if the legislature assembly is going to be dissolved because there's a problem, only the Lieutenant Governor can do that. The Queen's representative can do it, but we cannot do it as the people, not even to a single person. I mean, there are probably some political routes you can take, but there's really, I've not heard of it happening. So there's an idea. We'll think that through. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, put some comments. I'll be glad to hear what you have to say. Maybe there's an error and an aspect of this I haven't considered, but I think it'll be a good place to start. Let's talk about it. Let's have some better ideas to fix a system that is so easily corruptible and so completely out of our control. And I don't want to have to wait 4 or 5 years in order to get change from a despot that wants to take away social services, or that wants to take minimum wage and drop it through the floor, or some other economic policies that are going to destroy us. So maybe we can take our liberal democracy and turn it into an actual democracy. Little Green Man. This is the back door to a Manitoba legislator. Now, if you hit the subscribe button now, hit the notification bell, then you won't be surprised when they try to stick something up your back door.